still say good morning. To be honest, I had a whole slide presentation prepared, and something just happened that completely threw this out the window. So, although there's great value in this presentation, I encourage you to download the app. You can look at the presentation, it's fully there. With the few minutes that I have on stage, I'm going to share a slightly different story with your permission. Before I do that, so we're comfortable with each other, so we get to know each other a little bit better, so you know who's on stage, before I make the honor of this introduction, my name is Steve Schwartz. I'm the founder of Art of Tea. Art of Tea is a tea company based in Los Angeles, California. The way that I got into tea was I got a full paid scholarship out of high school to go into college. 6 months into it, my mom got diagnosed with brain cancer. And I dropped out of college to go move in and live with her. So I lived with her for about 10 months. We went from one doctor to another, and frankly, nothing worked for my mom, and there's nothing wrong with Western medicine. It just didn't work for my mom, but it really sort of woke me up. It got me thinking cancer must have been around for thousands of years. We just only recently labeled it as cancer. So if that's the case, there must be other healing modalities that are out there that can provide health and wellness and well-being. So I found this school in New Mexico called the Ayurvedic Institute, fell in love with the alchemy of blending herbs and botanicals and teas, so much so that as I was working at the school and studying at the school, I also worked 4 different jobs. I saved up my money, I got a backpack, and I started traveling around the world to find the best teas and botanicals possible. Now, I just got back from India, and the person that I was in India with, I've never taken a customer before. And I was sitting at the Boca Raton with the head of food and beverage, a beautiful property. I'm a little biased. There's tons of beautiful, amazing properties that we work with here in Florida, but I'm very partial to the Boca Raton. I was meeting with the head of food and beverage about this recent trip coming up in India. And he said, Steve, I'd love to join you. To be frank, our iced tea program, I want to go to origin. I'm a master sommelier, and I want to go there and I want to understand the craftsmanship and help define our iced tea program a little bit better. So I warned him. Listen, you're going to come back probably with some stomach issues. You're probably going to come back with other health-related issues. We're going to some pretty far remote areas. He said, I'm a pilot, avant-garde, I can do it. I got this. And he's an incredible human being. So we ended up going, and sure enough, we get stuck in a cyclone. We have leeches all over our legs. It was quite an adventure. But that's not the story that I wanted to share. The story I wanted to share was that while we were there, yes, it was remarkable for him to take some time off of his job and go to Origin in India. But while we were there, we were meeting with one of our farmers. And this farmer's a monk, and he's dedicated his life to the tea fields. He's dedicated his life for 6 hours a day. He's learning, and spiritual learning, spiritual growth, and 6 hours of working in the fields. And his craftsmanship was unbelievable, and I was blown away by this. So I told him, I said, I want to do more. What can we do to give back? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, is there a give back project we can do? Can we be a part of the community? Can we help build a water tower? Is there something that we can do to help pave roads like we've done in our other farms in other parts of Asia? And he said, just buy more tea. Like, we're very enterprising here. In fact, what we do is we also provide jobs and we provide opportunities for the 45 families outside of this monastery. And so I was so blown away by this story, and Lucas was also so blown away by this story because he wasn't looking for a free handout. He understood what it takes to be a leader. As a leader, he realized that regardless of title, he's not a manager managing employees, a manager managing people. He's a leader helping to inspire. He's a leader helping to think about the global impact of tea and the local impact of the economy that he can have within his own control. Now, we've touched properties across the country with our tea program. So knowing that on one hand, we're able to service these amazing farmers that we're working with, and at the same time, we're able to touch the guests that are traveling from around the world. I've been very blessed this past year. I've been in Maldives, working with Six Senses resorts, working on custom blends and custom formulations. We've created 3 blends for the White House. We got a call from the State Department asking if Dr. Joe Biden can have her signature on our tea. We've worked with Google, creating a unique blend for Google. We've done so much. So from my living room to where we are today and our tremendously talented staff, it's really phenomenal. But the main part of the story, and the reason why I'm bringing it up, is I just ran into someone I haven't seen in 5 years. I trained the first tea sommelier in the United States. And this was at Caesar's Palace. They said, is there such a thing? I said, there's no such thing yet in the United States. This was, gosh, over, I think, close to 15 years ago, maybe even longer. So spent a year and a half training this first tea sommelier. She's now the general manager of this property at Nobu. So her name is Melissa Fielding. If you see her, she runs a phenomenal tea program here, a phenomenal program at this hotel in general. So I had to share this story. But what it takes of all this is we have a capacity, regardless of title, regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of where we are in the world, regardless if we're walking barefoot in the tea fields or we're out there inspiring our guests' experiences as much as possible, we have a duty as citizens of this world to lead, to inspire, and to change this world. So I want to welcome you to join me. You can go to artoftea.com, learn more about our tribe, learn more about our mission, and be a part of what we're doing and the impact that we're making in this world. With that said, the topic of our discussion today is realizing your food and beverage full potential, trends, and maybe it is going to origin, right? Challenges. We're about to head into an election year. There's, questioning on the global economy and innovation for the year ahead. So our three amazing panelists is going to be Daniel Hostettler, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Boca Raton. We have John Kunkel, please excuse me if I'm not pronouncing your names correctly, founder and CEO of 50 Eggs Hospitality. Christian Glauser Benz, F&B of Development, U.S., Latam, and Caribbean of Dream Hotels, Hyatt Corporation. And David Israel, Senior Vice President of hotelAVE. So please put your hands together and welcome our amazing panelists ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we have a very exciting panel today discussing food and beverage and how it's truly changed over the last couple of years in how food and beverage plays a role in truly accelerating the growth of hotels and other forms of real estate. So we have a great panel here today, and I thought I'd kind of start out by talking a little bit about having each one of our panelists today talk about an example where they've stepped into, in kind of Dan's example of having various branded, unbranded, third-party, managed venues, how that's worked to create his reinvention of the Boca. John speak a little bit about his experience stepping into hotels around the world with his various brands and how he's had to adapt. And Christian, in the development side, what it takes, knowing that so much of his hotels and what makes Dream is the fact that north of 50% of his revenue comes through food and beverage. So maybe have Dan start a little bit about what's going on at the Boca today.
Sure. So we purchased the Boca Raton in 2019, just around COVID. It's MSD Hospitality, so it's the holding company for the Dell family. It was branded as a Waldorf Astoria 1,000-room property, and our reimagining is really to carve the buildings up into 5 separate lodging products, with the theory being that we were going from sort of mid-level luxury to ultra-luxury, and no one was going to stay in a 1,000-room ultra-luxury hotel. So instead, we wanted to give each of the lodging products its own personality, its own management team, and its own feel. So you pick your lodging product first, and then we have 300 acres on the Intercoastal and the Atlantic Ocean between the two sides of the property, with 15 different dining venues that all had to be reimagined in this first phase of our renovation, which is a 2-year-long, $250 million renovation. We just opened the property back up in December of 21, and working under the theory that no F&B team could concept 15 concepts at one time. We sort of did a hybrid where 4 of them are license agreements, partnerships with major food group, which had just come to Miami and was sort of hot in Florida. Seemed like a very good potential partnership for us. And then we reimagined the rest on our own. And it gave us sort of the ability to have operating partners help us put 4 of those signature dining restaurants together. We refer to those as signature dining and the rest as resort dining, but it also gave us a new following of New Yorkers who knew that product and were coming down here in droves to Florida and also knew the major food group product via Carbones and ZZ and all of their other products.
This is tiring hearing about that. That's a lot going on. My name is John Kunkel. I created a company called 50 Eggs, and those of you who are a fan of old Paul Newman movies might get the reference back there. But we kind of span from fast casual to fine dining and a bit of an incubator of sorts. We create brands on our own that will scale. We'll create brands for our partners. We'll adapt current brands into the use of our hotel partners and their needs. And so I guess one of the most unique experiences was our very first hotel partnership, which was going into the Venetian in Las Vegas with an American Southern brand. And I think at the time the president said, over my dead body will I put a Southern restaurant into an Italian-themed casino. So it was a bit of a saga and a drama, but it's ended up, out of the 50 restaurants on property after almost 10 years, it's one of the top performers, and we learned so much from that partnership that has helped us as we've grown in the company. And I think the relationship between creative hospitality groups like mine and hotel partnerships and hotel brands as a whole is a really unique one, and one that's helped not only fuel our growth and our creativity, but it's helped make us better as a company. So.
Right. Christian Glauser, Benz, VP of Development for Dream Hotel Group. For those of you who know the company, obviously it's been almost 25 years since the company was formed, and the emphasis of Dream Hotels has always been food and beverage, both through collaboration and self-designing and self-incubating. Our chairman really was a restaurant guy when he started the company in the 1990s, so we've evolved from being a hotel company that collaborated and brought in different groups to curate those food and beverage venues to point now where we have multiple properties that are in development and construction, like this one here in Miami, which have north of 5-6 venues per location. And so it's been a very interesting transition, and also the evolution of the brand that's basically built around the energy of all these restaurants and the F&B and how all that kind of contributes back into the hotel. So it's very much of a holistic approach to how we do food and beverage and hospitality. And I think the brand is just getting started with the next stage of our evolution. We have this property in Miami. It's the $250 million flagship with 168 rooms and 6 restaurants and a nightclub. And we're doing also in construction. We have a Dream in Doha in Qatar, and also we have another flagship in Las Vegas under construction. So we are basically over $2 billion in development and construction right now.
Great. A little bit about myself. So I kind of run the food and beverage practice within our firm. We oversee about 250 million of kind of third-party food and beverage across 40 different concepts. 25 different food and beverage operators. And, we've seen over the last, 5 or 10 years, this real movement towards needing to bring in a destination, right? And needing to bring in a concept that would drive more local or club or whatever it may be. And that a lot of our restaurants, you need to create more than one dining experience on a property in order to keep the guest on property, right? Because we've seen a lot more local restaurants, and how do you really do that? And how do you drive nightclub business, restaurant business, while also maintaining the fact that you have breakfast and lunch and room service and other things that traditionally are required to service a hotel guest, right? And I think it'd be good to hear, from Dan and John, how you've had to adapt, right, in order to accommodate the hotel guests, knowing that 80-90% in most of these third-party or well-known venues comes from the outside, right? And Daniel's example, it may come from club members and residents, but you're very much bringing out from the outside, but you have to service them during non-conventional meal parts for restaurants. So maybe talk through a little bit about how you solve breakfast or lunch or dining in the same venue more than once, because I know a lot of people here face that challenge, right? You have one or two venues, and a lot of times a guest doesn't like to eat breakfast where they're eating dinner, and how do you smoke and mirror a little bit to make it work?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
had a good answer for this.
So we've had the challenge. Chica in Las Vegas was a brand which was unique. I think we look at the programming in two ways. One is most of the hotels, as everybody's mentioned, have multiple dining venues. So we kind of look at it as how do we fit into that, either collaborating on the overall vision of the tenant mix and what categories of food they'd like to have and what brands we have or like to create to fit that. In the case of Chica, we had been operating with Yardbird. We really looked at the property as a whole and said, what do you not have, both from a chef positioning and a cuisine type, and really created Chica from scratch, which is kind of the reverse engineering of how Vegas works, where they'll usually take a brand and kind of populate it there, where we've created several brands for Vegas, in Vegas, and then expanded them outside. So kind of tackled it a little bit differently, but I think Chica has been a huge evolution from where we started, and as every brand that we create, there are constant tweaks. Even 11 years later with Yardbird, we're playing with menu and lighting and playlist and trying to keep things relevant. With Chica, we really had an opportunity to capture the customer for breakfast, but to David's point exactly, how do you do that and keep this environment for dinner and try to convey, hey, this is really fun at night and there's a little bit of entertainment, and you're going to go from a $20 check average to a $75, and it's all going to make sense within the same space. So I think that was certainly challenging for us, and we did it exactly as everyone described, playing with lighting, kind of sectioning off certain areas of the restaurant, certainly being able to convey and provide a different service style, different background and music, even sometimes changing the uniforms to be more light and bright during the day. And you're captured inside the cocoon of Vegas where you don't know what time it is and all of those fun things. So, it really is a unique challenge. I think in a normal restaurant setting to activate breakfast or a lunchtime period, we've done things to incentivize guests or our club members to be able to come during that time. We've relied heavily upon group dining, which we've both talked about a little bit on how to activate those spaces during the day. But breakfast is always a unique meal period for all of us to tackle, but necessary. And I think now more than ever, whether it's Vegas or outside of that, having a culinary-driven breakfast experience, both for your meeting groups and your individuals, is never more important. Kind of your standard kind of 3-meal period restaurant within the hotel serves a purpose, but they're also looking for unique experiences. And so I think we've been asked and look at these brands as an opportunity to capture more revenue and balance out labor costs and all those things, but also to kind of provide the hotel guest another unique opportunity, or at least a choice within that category of dining, if that makes sense.
And the brunch also has been encroached into the breakfast too, which
Right.
is crazy. We're seeing that in some of our locations, the brunch is going from Sunday to Saturday to Friday to Thursday.
Right.
In Nashville, for example, it's the hottest brunch in town now. So I think that the brunch also becomes very experiential.
Yeah.
People want to experience the city and the property through that. And it's not just breakfast anymore.
No, it's spot on. So it's one of our busiest meal periods, strangely enough, at a couple of our concepts. And, it's become, I think the way to thread the needle there, it's kind of brunch all day,
Yeah.
where you capture that breakfast and lunch crowd. And that's always tough to balance that, but at least you're not turning the line twice and trying to change out staff. It's a little easier on the prep side. So I think these all-day menus, which I think we've all played with a little bit, service the guest needs a little bit. It allows us to have a little bit more efficient operation along the way. But it is interesting. It seems to be more and more a growing trend within our industry.
And I think brunch is interesting also because it's a way that some of the higher end restaurants in luxury hotels have found a way to create accessibility to bring locals in, to give them eyes on their aspirational traveler. So, you see, you're able to bring people in for a day part that is a little bit more approachable in terms of pricing. You can make it a little bit more fun and less stuffy. And at the end of the day, it also brings eyes and eyeballs into creating the halo for the total property, which in the end is one of the main reasons why these chef-driven or nightlife-driven concepts are brought into properties, is to drive the halo, on the property, right? And to bring, that check the box of, it used to be a Michelin restaurant, and those who know me know that, I oversee, I think 30 venues that we brought in when we launched Moxie across the country, right? And it was, how do we create a 2.5, 3-star product and drive 4-star rates? And it was all driven by bringing people to the property and really driving, no different than Dream, how do we drive additional spend? How do you add, and I think we should talk about, how do you curate day parts that were unconventional, right? Like we recently opened a piano bar in New York, right? And how do you do things to keep people on campus, right? And I'm saying campus because I think a lot of people in the room are not necessarily just urban, right? They're resorts, and how do you keep people on campus or at the resort, and how do you create that secret sauce utilizing food and beverage to really drive ADR, which on the hotel side is where all the real money's made, right?
Right.
Choice. Choice, truly. I mean, I look at the emergence of casino floor bars. 11 years ago, there was little to none. There was a holding pen at the beginning of the restaurant with an 8-seat bar that you'd wait for your dining seat, but there wasn't a place to go sit and have a drink if you were at a convention and meet someone. And really, as a lot of the folks at Program out there started to look at the needs, there's a whole group of people that don't want to go to a nightclub and stay out till 5 in the morning, or can't recover for the rest of their event the rest of the day. So, the emergence of mixology-driven cocktail bars around Las Vegas was a fascinating evolution to see that happen, because it was exactly that. It was addressing the need of how do we keep folks here on property? How do we kind of check a box of what people are looking for? We know we have the shows, we have the dining destinations, we have 19,000 breakfast and brunch options, but what's keeping them here a little bit after dinner? Is there a DJ? Is there a piano bar? Is there a more quote unquote adult experience that is going to keep you a little bit later and keep you on campus? And that was a massive turn. The very first casino floor bar they opened up was called the Dorsia, and they did a collaboration with Sam Ross, who's arguably one of the best bartenders in the U.S. It had a great local designer and a good New York bar and nightclub person to kind of come and consult. So you got all the creative, and then Venetian operated. So you kind of had the best of both worlds. I think their first year they did $9 million with 50% of the bottom line of just a space that had been dead for 3 years previously. So it was just kind of identifying that need and then really kind of overshooting as far as creative and checking all the boxes where we're going to bring in a top 50 best mixologist, we're going to bring in a top designer, we're going to provide this very non-Vegas-like experience to be able to sit here and have a cocktail with girlfriend, friends, business associates, and not leave.
So, Daniel, as you're looking at your resort, and there's a plethora of restaurants.
Yes.
Ever-growing amount of restaurants, right? You have some difficult decisions to make it sometimes, right? You have You have some concepts that are third-party operated. You have certain concepts that you brought in somebody to consult and help you build a playbook and then hand off, right? And then there's kind of two other worlds that don't exist yet at your resort, which is taking a named concept and putting it at your resort.
Right.
And then there's the world that John likes to play in, which is, I want to fully control everything. This is a lease or a management deal. and
I like those too.
So how, looking back on it, or if you approached a new property, how would you think about what you should be doing in-house, what you should be licensing, what you should be partnering, right? You come from a background of doing everything in-house.
Yes, which is obviously my preference as being a control person. I think that if I had to do it again, I would probably look at that model. John and I talked a little bit about this, of the sort of contract it, write the playbook, and then hand it over. Although the licensing isn't a bad model either. I think for us, the challenge was we do have one licensed restaurant with major food groups, which is Siddel's, which is a known brand. But when we took the Italian concept or their ZZ Club concept, we named it under our own naming. So while it's licensed by them, we don't necessarily have the benefit of that named
Of the name, yeah.
Restaurant. And we sort of did that to hedge our bets and say, well, the name's ours, so if we want to take it over one day, we can. But then you miss the flip side of the famous name that not everybody necessarily knows. But I think from an economic standpoint, as an operator, it makes a whole lot of sense to hire a talented restaurant group to help you write the concept and the menu and get it off the ground, and then take it over on your own and stop paying fees.
Right, and Christian, you guys have gone through an evolution as well.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. It really depends on market and location and what you're trying to put out there in terms of product. That sometimes it really makes sense that you want to bring the local chefs, the local players into the mix, make them part of that collaboration and ideation process. In some other markets, for example, New York, where we were based primarily, we really knew the market and we knew how to play that market. Here in Miami, for example, we have 6 venues on a 6-floor entertainment building with a nightclub, and it was kind of stacked in such a way where, as a visitor, a guest, a patron, you kind of climb as the higher you get, the more expensive it gets, the more sophisticated it gets, the more complex the experience gets. And I think that primarily we did those on our own, but we also work with a couple other groups that we're soon to announce. And so really is a collaboration. I don't think anyone has all the answers when it comes to food and beverage. I think you have to be really open-minded and bring the best people in your city, in your market, your region to build it in such a way that it really becomes relevant as long as possible. John, you were talking about that. Relevance is very important to us too. We have venues in New York that are 20 years old, 15 years old. They've stayed relevant, making over $19 million a year per venue. And being relevant, I think it boils down to quality and consistency. If you don't have quality and consistency in this business, you're out in 5 years, 3 years, 2 years. So I think that is a very, very important part of how you build these concepts.
But I mean, I think one thing that's very important to that consistency is, some of those concepts, if you're a culinary concept, consistency means great product, great service, great food, right? That's what consistency means. When you're more of a lifestyle product, it also means you're consistently changing and evolving and speaking to one of Christian's venues, right? It reinvents itself pretty regularly, right? And they find ways to create activations, whether it's once or twice a year, that recreate that level of relevancy, right? And that's what they're known for, right? If you're known as a cutting edge lifestyle product, you need to continuously evolve.
And that's the software. So basically these hotels are like a laptop. It's the hardware, and you're constantly updating the software to make the experience really, really cool and interesting. And so these venues have timelines of 10, 20 years, but within those 10 years, they have these fluctuations of adjustment and reinvention and tweaking that you do through music,
Yeah.
menus, and all that stuff. That's I think that's really where the fun part is. It's a constantly moving and evolving.
And I've heard each of you talk a little bit about recreation of spaces, right? I think in the COVID world, or coming out of the COVID world, everyone had to learn to be more creative, right? You see a lot more spaces that used to sit vacant that now have come out with new purposes, right? Or one thing that I think coming out of COVID people learned was to only open their restaurants when they should be open, right? And to figure out what the guest truly wants, which is opened up this free sale world on the event space, right? And the good news is that the event side, the catering side, the bar side has really continued to grow. And maybe talk through some examples of how you guys have had to reprogram or evolve, right? Knowing that the world of the semi-buyout, which comes from the nightlife world, right, is now the new norm in restaurants and other spaces.
No, we were speaking earlier, and I think the growth around group dining is incredible. I mean, I think you were talking about creating a group dining space
Right.
of several hundred, which
Yep.
is kind of the old ballroom basically.
Right.
But how do you create an intimate dining experience? And those are not obviously easy to execute dining experiences with a group that large. But I think we're seeing it more and more where people want a themed or branded dining experience around group dining. And I think for our restaurants and our hotel partners, that is a constant demand. I think when Apollo acquired the Sands Group, they recognized just the potential around the group sales and the emergence of that. They're putting an enormous amount of effort and money behind revamping their own spaces, but trying to align how to, again, keep people on campus. Once they're in for a convention, how do we keep them at all of our venues throughout? We're very unique, and we run about a 10-person sales team throughout Vegas, which kind of operates throughout the country. But typically, you all are bringing them in and kind of like, what experience do you want to have?
Right.
But I was fascinated to hear how large you guys are thinking about, doing an event space now.
Yeah.
That's amazing, and it kind of gives me the cold sweats thinking about executing that. I mean, that's
Well, and I think what we wrestle with, which was the opposite of not enough restaurants and how do you create breakfast, is 4 restaurants that are signature dining that you're paying licensing fees on that are dinner only. So
Yep.
how do we repurpose those for corporate groups and group dining into breakfast and lunch venues that are based on those concepts? And make that a differentiation point against our competitors, where you are just going to go eat in a ballroom, and here we can say, well, if you want the Italian restaurant for breakfast or lunch, or the steak restaurant, there is a menu theme that goes with that dinner outlet, but you can use it during the daytime. Make use of that space.
It's definitely, I think, a trend, right? I mean, I opened a hotel, what was it, 2 months ago, where, we took a bet 4 years ago at this point of creating an actual like a real kitchen to deliver a la carte for up to 200 people in a private dining room, right? At Fifth Avenue, we created a private dining room, not a ballroom, of Cafe Carmelini. So you'll be able to have Michelin dining for 180 people, right, in a private event. And it was a big risk, right? Because it was a couple $1 million endeavor to make it so that you could deliver true a la carte service versus just banquet service.
Right.
And, the market is, and give the hotel, give the guest the option of, you can have celebrity chef dining or you can have hotel dining at a 50% premium if you want the branded thing, and everyone's paying up, right? And I think about, coffee breaks and we at SLS South Beach, we created 4 or 5 years ago, like the Caipirinha cart in a non-alcoholic way to do in breaks, right? And I think finding ways to get creative and knowing how important group is on the hotel side, we really had to use the food and beverage to create moments, right? Because that's how you sell group today is creating that unique experiential.
And here in Florida, for example, we had during COVID the lack of the weather. So when group was starting to come back towards the end of COVID, group events started to come back primarily in Florida because we had open air spaces. So suddenly every hotel operator realized, wow, we have these beautiful terraces, we've never used it. Suddenly all your open air spaces were super valuable. That spawned that sort of mindset, like maybe these terraces and decks could become much more than just terraces and decks. And I think that's where you've seen a lot of these new concepts in hotels that are basically embracing the bleisure, is the business group that wants to still have more than just a business experience in their travel. They want to really have a leisurely experience. So that's a lot of the stuff we're doing, for example, in Miami River. We get a 30,000 square feet rooftop. It's 2 buildings connected. It's one of the largest rooftops in the country with 2 swimming pools, day club, night club. That, I mean, it's one of the byproducts of really embracing outdoor spaces, and also the climate here in South Florida that, you know, allows you to use it all year long without really having to tent it or anything, like in places like New York.
So I know we have a little over a minute left, but you know, I think in kind of closing, I think it'd be great to hear from each of you. You know, I know Christian wants to answer what his favorite rooftop bar is around the country, but you know, what you guys have seen, whether it's on the technology side or the concept side, or where you see innovation coming in the years to come.
I think innovation's gonna come where innovation doesn't interfere with the experience. And that's the problem with innovation. I think technology and all those things tend to usually become sort of blocking you from the real experience. I just came back from Japan this summer, and there are some very interesting things being done over there that I think that eventually will make it to the West, Europe, and the US, where technology really is part of the experience. And so, you know, I'm looking forward for some of that to trickle down, and from a business model to really embrace it. So yeah.
That's fascinating. I've seen a lot of that. It is so hard to try to think about how to let that creep in without ruining what we all know and believe is that hospitality experience. You're being engaged. You're talking to a guy that didn't want to put TVs in a restaurant for a while. So it's coming. And I think, you know, the interesting thing about kind of where we're going in our industry from what we do is you know, throw your ego and throw what you thought you knew out the window, because it's changing every day. I think, you know, David and I joked a little bit, you're never done in this industry. You've never arrived. Your restaurant's busy. We've got it. This is it. You're kind of as good as your last service. And then you got to pick it up and try to make it better the next day. I think, you know, as you mentioned, and as you mentioned, it is, what are we going to do today, tomorrow, next week, and next year? And thinking about that now. And I think the groups that are ahead of that, whether it be technology or integrated design, we've all seen the not only the continuation and emergence of more entertainment-based dining globally, but, you know, like you said, how does that come together with the technology piece is pretty fascinating. But you know, I think we all love what we do. There's parts of it that, you know, give us gray hair and keep us up at night, but it's a fascinating business to be able to continue to evolve and create, and it never ends. And I guess that's what's exciting about the future.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see how AI works into all of this. We are already looking at how do you in a limited way use that to supplement your live staff for everything from restaurant reservations to just making that a more engaging, quicker experience for the guest, and also labor control when you're taking hundreds of calls a day to make restaurant reservations. So how we do that and keep it a human element in a business that is what it's all about is going to be interesting to watch.
Right. So yeah, I think we all agree that the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry is all about the people, right? And you know, where technology is going to strive is where the technology enhances the experience and actually enables the staff to be more successful, right? Because what we've all been talking about today is the things that technology can't create for us, which is the experience, it's the touch, it's the hospitality, right? And I think that's where the real innovation is going to come, is that we're gonna learn to streamline certain things that have been redundant and candidly trickier on our staff, right? And we're gonna focus now on how to continue to make the experience better. So Thank you, guys.